15 seconds time.
Will I advance my slides myself?
If you want to.
Bye.
So Elizabeth, you already have my slides ready, do you?
Yeah, and I'll load them once you've given your presentation.
The audio's not working, sorry folks, because of Mamta's microphone being on.
Well, hello and welcome to our closing panel, Shaping a Diverse, Inclusive Workforce. And I'm delighted to be joined by our chair of our panel, Mamta Singhal, council member of the IET, BEng, MSc, MBA, CEng, MIET and WES. She's a design engineer and has an NPD and supply chain background. And moreover, she's an active campaigner on diversity in engineering. In 2007, she was awarded the Women's Engineering Society Prize for engaging and inspiring young people's interest in STEM. And as a chartered engineer, she's been working for Scottish Enterprise, Dyson, Mars, and international toy company Hasbro. Joining Mamta are Professor Joanna Collingwood from the School of Engineering at the University of Warwick. Joanna originally studied physics at the University of York and has a PhD from the University of Warwick, and is an analytical scientist with an interest in developing understanding of transition metal distribution and trafficking in the human brain in health and disease. She established the Trace Metals in Medicine Laboratory in the School of Engineering in 2011 and has since developed a thriving research group. Dr. Ollie Follian is the co-founder of the Association for Black Engineers UK and is also a principal process engineering consultant for Clearfall Enterprises Limited. He has a BEng in chemical process engineering and a PhD in combustion, has authored international publications, and in 2018 he was accepted into fellowship of the Institution of Chemical Engineers. Ollie has championed successful causes and co-authored publications on the influence of role models in transition to work, and organised successful community initiatives through Shell and the Royal Academy of Engineering. And finally, last but not least, Professor Will Whitto from the Wolfson School of Mechanical, Electrical and Manufacturing Engineering at Loughborough University. And he's also the very first Associate Fellow of the Women's Engineering Society. He is a professor in radio frequency materials at the Wolfson School, and he has co-authored more than 250 academic papers and is named investigator on £12 million worth of research funding. He has participated in many outreach activities over the years to inspire young people into STEM careers, which led him to win the WES Men as Allies Award in 2017. And I'm now delighted to hand over to Mamta, your chair, to host this panel.
So welcome everyone. Thank you. What a great introduction. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm just going to run through a little bit about myself. So Elizabeth did an amazing job, and then just speak about the speakers, so about the panelists. So again, I work for the Institution of Engineering Technology. I'm on their council. I became a chartered engineer quite recently. I'm also a fellow of the Women's Engineering Society. And I've probably got, I was trying to work this out, I've probably got about 17 years experience in industry. I've recently become a professor in, a visiting professor for Middlesex University for their design and engineering department. And I think one thing that's really poignant for this topic is I'm also a tri-national. So as you can probably tell, I've got Indian heritage. I was born in the States, I grew up in Scotland, and I now reside in just outside of London. So I think it's a great testament of how diversity and kind of global understanding is so key within engineering. So we've got our three amazing panelists. I mean, just listening to the caliber that we've got, and I think that's inspirational for everyone out there to see what we've got in our industry. So I think, without further ado, I think I can't do justice to all the work Joanna's done, but maybe if you want to share your slides and talk about some of the things you've been involved in.
Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here again at the Women's Engineering Society Annual Student Conference. I've been privileged to be able to contribute over the last few years, really bringing some personal experience from my career in this space as somebody who went in through a physics route, came into an engineering department, eventually into the School of Engineering, but has juggled all kinds of things over the years, little things, which I'd say I'd never had to face any really significant barriers to my career when I look at the detail, beyond all the things we would expect, the academic challenge and the location challenge, sometimes being able to go and study where you want to. Those are things that are common to all of us. But when I look back, very privileged. Both parents had been through the academic system. I had all the support I needed. But there were lots of little tripwires along the way that when I look back on them and reflect on them, I can see that they could be potentially quite cumulative as barriers to people taking particular routes. And what I've done, I was asked to look at 3 pieces of advice based on my experience and career. And I've just picked out a couple of things that I hope will be helpful, just to think about perhaps where individuals in the audience are at and where you might go in your futures. I think the first thing that's inevitable for all of us is that the people who we meet, they will classify us. They will intuitively do this. We all do this. It's very natural. It will guide expectations of you. And so being able to manage expectations from others and the expectations you have of yourself, which can be quite shaped by those from others, about your workload, about your work-life balance, your family expectations, how you manage health issues. All of these things can be tremendously steered by others when you're at an early stage of your career. And keeping perspective on that, coping when your face doesn't fit, and staying true to who you are and what you believe in is so important. I think examples that I have experienced in this space include around my research not fitting. I work in an area that sits at an interface between research councils. It sits at an interface between journals. And it's been exciting to watch opportunity in my area grow, but I was doing it before it was something people were looking for. And that can be awkward, but having the courage to keep going with it and being able to publish and being able to get established in a space which isn't obviously there to be filled, it can actually be some of the best possible opportunity, but it does require some determination. So I think the way that we respond to people's expectations of us can really influence whether we thrive or not, and whether we change direction to fit with them, or whether we champion where we think there really are opportunities. And in due course, of course, the way you approach others, the way you classify them, is going to impact their opportunity. The next thing I wanted to talk about was knowledge and the impact of knowledge and independence. So a couple of examples here. A few years ago, I was looking into the literature in my field, and I discovered that a key assumption had been misreported from work done about 100 years ago in a journal published in another language. But I was very curious about this point, and I dug back and I found the source. I found the source data. And when I had the opportunity to review the field in quite a public forum, I was able to just quietly relaunch that piece of information as a correct representation of the original source, essentially correct that. So it's now being picked up on and reported on correctly. And that was important for me, to be independent in the field, to get back to that source data. And it doesn't just apply to the academic content. With the work I do on gender equality, I'd share something called the Gender Task Force at University of Warwick. And I found an example recently about women being more likely to have large workload tasks that are collegiate, perhaps some of the larger administrative tasks. There was a suggestion that they were disproportionately burdened with such tasks in the academic setting. And there was a reference to a research paper on this, and I was very curious because I'd heard this anecdotally, but I wondered if there was real evidence of it. So I dug back into the research literature, and what I found was that rather than this purely being something you might interpret as a burden, or women being disproportionately victims of administrative tasks, what I found was a different value different default set of values, that these tasks were perceived differently in terms of their importance to the organisation, and that there was some gender bias in people's approach to them and their value of them, and that was one factor in this. It was far more nuanced than it had been presented in the literature. So both of these examples are things where, by going back to the source, taking responsibility for the information, for that knowledge, I think it means I'm better able to do my job. It changes how my contributions are received in forums. So if we're talking about policy and process, I'm able to do more because of having gone to sources. So these are just detailed examples, but of how it works in practice. It's all very well finding the information, but you do need a forum where you can be heard. So making sure that you're active in networks and committees and the places where change can be affected. It's really important to tie in with this. And then the last point I wanted to make is that you're not alone, but it can often feel like you are. I think there are times when, for all of us, we might be in a workplace where we feel isolated because of who we are, that we perhaps don't fit with a culture or with an immediate team that we work with. Or we might feel alone because of personal circumstances such as health or childcare responsibilities or other carer responsibilities that can isolate us in quite practical ways from teams. Or because we're working on a project or a policy that sets us apart from others at work, maybe through physical location or through doing something quite controversial or challenging or comfortable where you don't feel supported by your organisation. And in all these scenarios, there are networks of people that you can reach out to. There are equality and diversity teams championing networks for those who might be isolated by personal circumstance. And there are management and leadership training programs that work across institutions where you can deal with some of those challenges you might not be able to voice in your own institution and learn how others are approaching them and realise that you're not alone. And so in this context, again, if the support isn't there, do what you can to create those networks and consider where you can ensure that others also are not left behind. That was all I was going to say. Thank you.
Wow, I've been scribbling notes frantically, and I think all of that's been so insightful. So absolutely, I could resonate with so many aspects of that. So thank you very much, Joanna. We'll now move on to our next speaker, which is Ollie. Ollie's got some great experience, as Elizabeth highlighted. So I'll hand over to you, Ollie.
Oh, thank you. And I really enjoyed. I think ma'am, to your microphone's doing right. Yeah, I really enjoyed just listening to Joanna there, and actually it may almost sound like I plagiarized her presentation, because some of the thoughts that I had reflect some of what she was going to say. Yeah, I'm a process engineer. I come from a family of engineers. Dad is an engineer, and my younger sister, who I refer to as my boss within my organization, is also an engineer. And what we found is as we started to work in industry, we certainly found that there were a number of experiences we were having, experiences that meant that sometimes you weren't often able to make sense of. And in order to try to understand them, what we tried to do was reach out to people with a little bit more experience than us. And certainly what I found as a person from a minority ethnic background is that there weren't often those people. And it was that, and the fact that we could find that there were a lot of young people in the area that we were living in need of mentorship, who were at risk of falling prey of things like knife crime and so on. That was what led my sister and I to found the organization that we found 13 years ago. But prior to that, I had an interesting experience trying to get into the industry. And I remember looking for a very long time before I could find a job. It was a particularly tough year, but I think it felt like I was applying. And at one point, I thought somebody was having a joke at my expense, because I'd applied for this job. I used to go to a library to apply for a job and apply for jobs. And by the time I got home, I had an email that says that after careful consideration, we won't be moving you any further. And I thought, that was 3 hours ago. Surely, how careful could you possibly have been? But I eventually found work, and you know, that almost brings what I'll call my 0th point, which is there is no substitute to persistence. Just keep going if you're in that space. But if I was to talk about the 3 things that I've learned in my career, the first one is this: your career is entirely your responsibility. Your progress is it's entirely up to you. I'm not saying that you won't have companies with wonderful graduate training programs, or you won't be on a path to chartership that gives you many opportunities, or you might even be fortunate enough to find some enablers in your career. But the primary responsibility is yours. And somewhere between into my career, I realized that the things that actually matter most in terms of what's going to really move me forward, it was not what happened between 9 and 5, it was what happened afterwards. It's all the work that you do outside of that environment that really helps you. The second thing I learned is that nobody succeeds without an enabling environment around them. So we like to think of ourselves as self-made people, but ultimately what is going to lead to that progress, or what leads people into areas of a success progression, is often that they are surrounded by people, or to use the Isaac Newton's borrowed phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants. They could see further because they stood on the shoulders of giants. So you need those people, and if you can't find them at work, well, start to look for those networks. Just as Joanna said, this is why I said I plagiarized her presentation. Start to look for those people who can give you that enabling environment. And then the final thing I'll say is one thing that certainly those of us from minority ethnic backgrounds, and certainly a lot of people from female backgrounds may struggle with. This is a generalization, but there is this issue of confidence, and sometimes that is because if you are the only person who looks like you, sounds like you in an environment, it can be very challenging. I've spent almost 20 years of my career now having that feeling, and I learned that the way to deal with that is preparation is the key to confidence. I don't just mean preparation in terms of the content of what you need to do, but preparation by interacting with the people. So you don't go into a meeting. So these days I've learned that if I'm going to go into a meeting to discuss something, I want to make sure it's not an absolute surprise that everybody in the room, I've done my homework, not just preparing content, but preparing with people. So I'm going to stop there and listen to what the others have to say.
I'm going to unmute myself. Yeah, no, thank you very much. And again, you know, having spent such a long time in industry, I think you're just a little bit older than me, but absolutely, career progression, it's in your own hands. And I can, you know, I've sat there wanting my boss to say, right, when's my next promotion? But actually, it's really up to ourselves. And I fully concur with confidence. I know myself, I've questioned my own abilities, but it's about having people like those people at WES supporting me along some tough times and some good times as well. And so without further ado, leave the best till last. Will, over to you.
Okay, so thank you, ma'am, for the introduction. So my name's Will. So ironically, it's slightly intimidating for me being a white male. I feel like a bit of a minority, right? It's a good eye-opening experience for me, but yeah, I feel like I don't quite fit in. But thank you for inviting me to talk. It's a great honor. I agree with what Joanna and Ollie said, that your careers are pretty much random. About 8 years ago, I thought I was going to quit engineering and become a photographer, and now I'm a professor. So things can change pretty quickly, right? Oh, can we go on to the next slide? I don't know if I can. Can you go to the next? Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to tell you 3 quick pieces of advice. So I assume most of the audience are students. So we all know there's a lot of subconscious bias in society, and it's not fair. But things are a hell of a lot better now than when, like 20, 30 years ago, when I was kind of growing up, right? So when I was at school, the idea of a female saying she wanted to be an engineer would be laughed out loud. In the same way, if someone in my class said they wanted to be a boy said he wanted to be a primary school teacher, it would have been genuinely laughed out loud. So, of course, there's still a lot of bias in society, and we need to all do a hell of a lot more, especially including men, to try and men have to fight for equality and diversity as much as everyone else, and that's really important. But the situation is now a hell of a lot better than it was a generation or so ago. So I like that picture. If you Google the word engineer, all you see is white men in hard hats. And people say there's not enough diversity in engineering, but you do have white hard hats, yellow hard hats, and blue hard hats. But you're right, it's crazy, right? So for me, who does electrical engineering, the idea that most 10-year-old kids think engineering is something you have to wear a hard hat for is really annoying. I think that picture of the escalator against climbing up the cliff face is quite a good analogy for today. So maybe I had it quite easy and I didn't have all those obstacles in my career. It's quite hard to know, really, but I'm sure I had it a little bit easier in a lot of times. I would say that everyone who's listening to this, you've had to overcome 100 subconscious biases and hurdles. You may not be aware of them, but even just knowing what engineering was, or knowing it's being promoted as a career and all those sort of things. So you've had to overcome a lot of hurdles to get to where you are. And therefore you developed a hell of a lot more skills than the average male engineer has to get to the same point. So I think you should actually see yourself as being more skilled and more valuable to employees than the average male. And you can see those stats at the bottom. So we all know that successful companies all know that diversity is really, really important, right? Diverse companies are more successful, they make more profit, they're better working environments. So you can play the game and you can use this to your advantage. You know that a lot of companies are actively looking for female engineers, and that is an advantage. So you can use the strengths that you've had to overcome these challenges, and also companies are now actively looking for a diverse workforce as possible. Can you go on to the next slide? Okay, so in terms of getting a job, obviously your CVs and your interview is a really important thing. So most students, when I look at their CVs, I've literally looked at hundreds of student CVs, and they're always pretty ropey until they start working on them. So a CV should be like a sales document. You want to be promoting the best side of your skills. So as a generalization, I guess women are a bit more hesitant about themselves, and men are a bit more confident. So for example, I was at an interview for a lectureship once, and the female candidate says, well, I will try and write some grants, but it's difficult and it's very competitive, which if you think about it was actually being perfectly honest. The male candidate said, well, I will just win 5 grants every year and everything will be great. And everyone in the room just went, oh yeah, he seems quite committed. And yet he was actually effectively lying and she was effectively being honest. And it was a really interesting thing. A lot of people in the room just went, oh, let's go for the guy in that case. And I happened to be looking at her CV at the time. So I looked at her CV. I was looking at her CV during her presentation and went, well, she can do it. She's just being a little bit more modest. So in a CV and interview, you have to sell yourselves and make the best and present the best case of you. So I've shared with the organisers my CV and my advice about CVs. So that might be quite helpful. I really think that mentioning WES and your involvement in WES, whether it's just coming to this conference, is actually a really good tip for female engineers. We know the subconscious bias. Everybody has it. I have it. Even female engineers have it, right? But just mentioning WES, it just kind of, to me, it kind of mitigates that subconscious bias and it resets it. And I also think you can also mention that it's for networking skills. So both, as Ollie and Joanna says, those networking skills are really important. So to say you've either had those networking skills or you're going above and beyond to do extra things beyond your job or your studies, again, it's a really important thing. So those 2 pictures at the bottom talk about the subconscious bias. So if you took, often they've looked at reference letters, and for reference, the typical keywords for female students would be hardworking, conscientious, reliable. And the typical words that people would give for their male students would be brilliant, intelligent, and all those sort of things. So you might want to share those pictures with people who are sending a reference for you or having a quick chat, or you might want to consider getting a female colleague or academic to potentially write a reference for you, just to kind of remove that subconscious bias a little bit. Yeah, okay. So yeah, like I said, I shared my CV and my advice with organisers. So yeah, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so I think there's always going to be bias in society. So for example, for years, bias about the way you look, the way you smile, the way you dress. So I'd known this colleague quite well for about 8 years. And he said to me one day, he goes, well, I always thought you were just a scruffy guy. And he judged me on that, right? So people are going to judge you whatever you are. So my advice to you is just be happy in your own skin and let other people worry about their own prejudices. You can't really control it, so there's no point worrying about it. I think it's not a bad strategy to ask for a mentor, or if you mentor others, that can be a great thing. So things like mentoring others or doing outreach, it doesn't necessarily take up a lot of your time, but it looks pretty awesome when you do your end of year if you're applying for jobs or you're doing your end of year appraisals. That's a really good thing. If you go, so there's lots of awards for female engineers. So if you go for them, again, it's an awesome thing to put on your CV to say you've been nominated. So that is just a great thing to say you're being on your CV, and that probably puts you on a yes pile straight away when you're going for jobs. Generally, female engineers don't put themselves up for promotion as much as they should. So just be positive, believe in yourself, speak to your line manager and say, what do I need to do to get promotion, and put yourself forward. And I think you can play the game a little bit, right? So we know there's lots of subconscious bias in society. But for example, my dean stood up in staff meetings and said, we need more female academics. And therefore, a lot of companies are trying to actively recruit females. And you've had to overcome some disadvantages. But I think you can play the system a little bit and try and take the advantages where you can. Okay, so that was all I wanted to say. If you want to follow me on Twitter, or you have great stories about equality and diversity in engineering, please share them with me. But that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you, Will. And I like that last bit about awards, because it was just, 13 years ago, I won the WES Young Women Engineer of the Year Awards. And I was put forward for that after a male, dare I say, a white male, 60-year-old guy in industry said that I shouldn't be in the profession. And I got a bit of a bee in my bonnet, and I went to the WES website and the IT website and got someone to put me forward for it, and I've never looked back. So, again, really, really good advice. I'm just going to I've been taking notes as you've all been talking, and it's really good advice for myself, and I'm really hopeful that the students find this useful. So I'm just going to summarize some of the key points that I've got, and do feel free to chime in. But Joanna talked a lot about classification and actually where do we fit in and where do we not fit in, and the value of being different. I can see all of us are different in our own way, and whether that is from hair color to eye color to the way we speak and talk, and actually embrace that and see it as a selling point. You can try and fit in, but actually champion your differences, and I think that's really nice. I'm recognised because I'm an Asian person with a Scottish accent, so I'm well remembered, but actually that's a unique selling point. Each of you out there have got something really special about you that you should push and be recognised for. Look for opportunities, absolutely. Whether that's through WES or through other networks. Get involved in forums and networks and outreach events. And again, Will touched on that point. You're not alone, and I know, like many of you, including myself and maybe others, I felt alone. I felt I'm the only one going through this, struggled. And I've been very fortunate because of my network with WES to actually just reach out and say, I'm struggling with this, and being very open to say, I need a bit of help. What can I do to make this situation better? So I think Joanna had some really good points, and I think there's going to be good times and there's going to be bad times, but you're not alone. You've got the people at WES that are such a massive network of women, men of all different levels and abilities that are here to help each and every one of you in different ways. So indeed, I thought that was really good, and I'm sure I could listen to Joanna for much longer of time allowed. So thank you, Joanna. I can't give everyone justice. It's just so good. Ollie, you touched a lot around job hunting and actually getting out in the workplace. So again, most of our audience are graduates, are going to be graduates in the coming years in engineering. And I think that was really good advice about self-promotion and actually the confidence of going out there and getting to see what's available and what you want to do, and never be kind of deterred by those knockbacks. I've had many job rejections, many job rejections. And for every rejection, I think, right, what can I learn from this? Can I get feedback from it? And does that actually matter? Actually, there's something better. And I was quite a headstrong, graduate, and I went for a job interview at Hoover, and I didn't get the job. And I said to them, well, I'll get a job at Dyson. And literally 3 months later, I got a job at Dyson. So it just goes to show that, okay, I'm not saying like use my tactic, but actually not necessarily getting the opportunity you first want might lead to something much better. Your environment was key. Indeed, surround yourself with positive people. There's going to always be people in your life trying to pull you down for whatever reason, right? They don't like your height, they don't like just anything, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you look, the way you sound. Ignore them. Honestly, really good point, Ollie. It's not worth it. Be around great people, and again, WES is just full of fantastic, motivational people that will boost your confidence. We're here all the time to support people, and also that topic of kind of get to know your audience and the people you're going to be interacting with. So I know when I've gone for job interviews, for example, I've gone into LinkedIn or I've Googled their names and just understood what inspires them, what interests them, so that I can throw those little nuggets into meetings. And I think that's what you were alluding to, Ollie, is in a board meeting, who are those people? What do they need to know? What don't they need to know? Are you going to go into too much detail? Because that you're going to get noticed, and when you do your homework, you will get recognised. So absolutely, and practice among your friends and your colleagues, or any of your network. Do a little role play session. So I didn't know Will wanted to be a photographer. Maybe you can do some photography for the WES network. But amazing that, Will at one point thought, this isn't for me. And I've definitely been there in my career thinking, what do I do? This isn't for me. And it's just been a bad week, month, day. But I've always loved engineering, and it sounds like Will's incredibly talented when it comes to an engineer. I like the point, I never thought of it that way, that equality and diversity impacts everyone. I'm sitting here as an ethnic minority. When I graduated from engineering, there was only about 5% women in the sector. I loved my profession, but I always thought I was the one that was going to try and make change happen. But actually, it's everyone's responsibility, irrespective of level or colour or background. And I see some companies really doing very well at promoting everyone within the team. I've worked with working mums to elderly people, to people who are caring at home, and they need flexible hours or situations for a variety of reasons. So everyone has a role to play, and I think keep that in mind. If you see someone feeling a bit excluded or maybe not part of the team, bring them in. It's your responsibility as much as theirs. Overcoming big hurdles. Yeah, I like that. Actually, the knockbacks are actually massive learnings for all of you, whether that's exams you're sitting, personal stuff that you might be going through. They're all making you that little bit tougher and stronger. It's sad to say, but life's not going to be 100% smooth. I think all four of us have probably been through some really tough times in our life, and we probably look back going, how did I get through that? But that's testament to your network and your friends and your family, and your own resilience and your confidence, and knowing that you're really good at what you do. And to get, as you said, into a degree into engineering has already shown that you're so capable. So I thought that was really good. Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to look at Will's CV. I want some tips. So yeah, I think start prepping a CV from day one. Just start pulling it together, and I think that's a really good way of seeing where the gaps are and how to grow. And
in the published Q&A.
Should we move on to the Q&A? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Have we got some questions? Has anyone got questions coming in?
Yeah, there's is Dyson a company to work? Yes, a question from Daisy Dudderidge. Is Dyson a gender inclusive company to work for? I can't hear you, Mamta, you're muted.
Sorry. There we go. I was at Dyson about 18 years ago. I was there during just after graduating. I was one of the few females. I thought they were very supportive. They were still quite new in the market back then, but I think they are, for what I did design engineering, and they're still one of the best, kind of very entrepreneurial. I thought, and I think now they're very, very supportive of women engineers.
And Sarah Abdul Ahad has asked, where would awards be advertised and what kind of awards are there? And I can certainly say that the IET Young Woman Engineer Year of the Award, which Ollie and I were very proud to be involved in judging this year, there will be a meet the shortlist in early December, and the awards will be made in early March. And believe you me, we know who's won, and it's really hard to keep it a secret. But they open up the nominations next summer on the IET website. And the WES also offers the Top 50 Women in Engineering Awards, which for next year will be women who are engineering heroes, those who have contributed to life-saving devices or situations. So whether you've helped with COVID or with international disasters or flooding, or whether you're making ventilators or keeping the lights on and making sure that you're a bit of a hero, then we will be wanting to hear from you, and we will be announcing that and opening nominations in January next year. And I'm sure there are plenty of other awards that many of you others know about.
Yeah, if I can just comment on this as well, thank you, Elizabeth. My experience, the student groups that are affiliated with the Women's Engineering Society, the WES student groups at our institutions, are fantastic at finding opportunities to engage with competitions and awards and network awards. And so if you've got a group at your institution, do talk with them and look for those opportunities. And likewise, if you haven't got a group, it would be wonderful to see one start in your institution. They can be really fantastic environments for mentoring, as well as seeing those wider opportunities.
Yes, and Sarah has a follow-up. What was the WES one called? It's the Top 50 Women in Engineering. It's called the WE50, WE50, and we change it every year. So it started out in 2016 as the most influential 50 women, then the most influential under 35, then returners and transferers. Last year was apprentices and former apprentices, and this year we've had sustainability. And as I said, next year will be engineering heroes, and the criteria and the closing date and all of the details will be announced in January. And if you're a member of WES, we will send you an email. So there's every incentive to join as a WES member, which students can do for £15.
Right, so I just had a quick look online. You can find it very easily if you search for it. There's awards for like women in construction engineering, obviously the IET. RAN just got an award. There's IMECI have got an award. The Society of Women Engineers. So I mean, that's just taken me 5 seconds to Google it. So just typing in female engineer award came up with about 10 things I found pretty quickly.
And two awards that one award I've also been shortlisted for as a women engineer was the Women of the Future Award, where they pick 35 women under 35 in different areas, but they have a science and engineering category. So in 2008, I was under the science and technology and engineering category. And in 2014, I was under professional women for my services to engineering. So Women of the Future Awards, again, they helped me raise my profile considerably.
And WES also has the Karen Burt Memorial Award, and this is awarded to the best newly chartered woman engineer of the year. And the way to be nominated by that is to get chartered in 2021 and to ask your professional engineering institution to select you as their best newly chartered woman. And then the one that they've chosen will get submitted to us, and we will choose that in the summer. We are actually announcing this year's winner on the 10th of December at the prestigious Caroline Hazlitt Lecture, which will be a free webinar. And Amanda Fisher, who's the Chief Executive Officer of AMI, will also be our keynote speaker for that. We have a new question as well, just come in. From Alex Knight, my co-host. What advice would the panel give to students going into industry for things they can do to help workplaces improve their cultures of inclusion?
Could I be really cheeky and comment from a non-industry environment on this up front? Because I just say that I worked on the Athena Swan Charter in our School of Engineering since about 2013, and since then took it to Silver Award and have supported our institution to retain silver. And it has been the most powerful driver of cultural change. It's because it made us measure what was happening. We had to have really strong understanding of the statistics for our institution, looking at admissions of applications and those who are actually taken onto the courses by gender, looking at attainment, performance, and then looking across student cohorts, looking across staff cohorts, and having an action plan to which we were held to deliver this by an external body looking at our progress. And only if we fulfilled that and we actually showed improvement could we retain our charter mark and potentially go to the next level. I think without that kind of structure, it's very, very hard to get sustainable change in an organisation. You can get real progress if you have somebody senior who's championing it and sets the tone. But if they move post, it can all go overnight and you can actually find yourself going backwards. But if you've got an externally recognised award, that can make a big difference. So I appreciate that isn't quite the answer they were looking for because it's not industry, but I hope that helps to some extent.
Yes, I'd like to add something to that. I think Alexandra's posed the question in a very interesting way, because this time you appear to be asking what those people going into the industry can do to make their workplaces a lot more inclusive, which can sometimes be difficult because as a graduate or as somebody in a relatively junior level within a company, your role isn't quite as influential enough to influence the culture within the company. But what's happening in quite a number of our companies at the moment is every one of us is a champion for, or can be a champion for something, or an ally of something. And depending on what that is, so for some people it's gender, for others it's ethnicity, for some it's disability, you can be effectively the conscience of your company in that particular area. And the way that will work would be in the form of employee resource groups. So, for example, many of the companies that we work with, the likes of Shell and Spirit Energy and so on, have all of these employee resource groups that cover different aspects of the D&I agenda. You can bring that into you can either join those groups or you can bring that culture into your company. And these days, especially with some of the events of this year, quite a lot of people at leadership level are starting to understand the importance of not just the moral imperative for D&I, but the way in which it affects their business. And so there is a lot more openness. So I would say, if you don't have those resource groups in your company, have the confidence to actually bring that to HR, bring that to your leaders within your company, and encourage those to be set up. And then after that, what you can do is set up quite a number of very interesting activities that don't have to feel like people are being coerced or even preached to, but things that gradually involve people into those contexts in which you can start to have conversations around D&I. So those are some of the things that I've seen in various companies that you can do.
One thing that I did quite early on is I found people within the company that had graduated from my university. And when I worked at a few of the companies, I found out that one of the VPs was actually a graduate. So when he came over from America, you know, he was Scottish, but he'd progressed up the ranks. He came to see me, and it was amazing as a young 20-year-old in business to have a VP say, "Oh, would you fancy coming for a coffee? I'd love to meet another Scottish graduate." It was brilliant. And, you know, I've also just, I've seen that in every company I've gone into. Or, you know, are they part of the WES network? You know, figure out, are they part of something that you're already part of? And that gives you an in to have a chat with them. And they can be your mentor. You can confide in them and things that you're finding difficult or you need a bit of help on. And then from that, you might be able to build, you know, as Ollie said, a forum or a network or a coffee club or something like that that helps you grow. Because I think growth is really important, and just understanding your strengths and your weaknesses as well. So yeah, good advice.
Just one very quick addition. One other thing that companies are starting to, I was at it was Black People in Construction. They did their first year anniversary yesterday, and Nadeem Zahawi, the MP, Conservative MP, was there, and I was surprised to hear him say something, because I thought, wow, everyone's starting to sound so woke nowadays. But he said something about reverse mentoring. You know, more and more companies are starting to embrace that. So that's a really good opportunity for a young person. If you can get that working within your company, you can definitely have a very strong influence within your company. You don't only get good mentoring, you're also mentoring that person into what life is like for you as a female engineer. You know, and that can be really, really powerful.
That's really great. And Mamta, we have to wrap up this session now and bring on Alex, my co-host, for the final 15 minutes.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, especially Mamta and this fantastic panel, because that was a really insightful discussion and something that's close to so many of our hearts about the importance of diversity and inclusion in engineering and what we can all do to make a difference in the workplaces. So I just wanted to kind of reflect back and summarize about the day-to-day. And I mean, we've heard from so many, right from the very first thing this morning with Dame Judith Hackett, all the way through to so many amazing speakers, panelists, you know, the stream sessions. I mean, gosh, it's been such a rich day of content, even though despite we had some technical issues, which we really apologize for, but thank you for bearing with us. And, you know, it's been, just shows how valuable the day has been, that despite the technical issues, we have soldiered on. What struck me, I think, sort of two key things that struck me. One, the energy and the inspiration in this virtual room from all the speakers about how sort of rewarding and satisfying their jobs in engineering are. And the second thing was the honesty and openness that the speakers provided. And really, you know, about things that were hard, like barriers they faced or failures that they've encountered, but the importance of resilience and persevering in overcoming these. And just, it kind of gives everybody faith that you can't expect the road to be smooth, no matter what industry or career you're in. As a student going into the next stage for you, whether that's further academia or industry, you've got to expect it's not going to be a smooth road. There will be bumps in the road, but the main thing is stay positive and believe in yourself and be resilient and keep that kind of that positivity and that resilience going. And so many of the speakers have mentioned the number of times they had setbacks, and yet they kept going, and look at where they are now. So always try and remember that there is a way forward. You just have to persevere, think outside the box, be curious, be creative, be courageous. And I think, we've had so much insight from the 2 panel discussions. I loved both of those. The one this morning on sustainability, the one we've had just now on diversity. They are such important topics, very close to all of us here at WES, obviously. And I think, the panelists were outstanding. There's such a high caliber there. And we've just, there's so much insight. And that's the fantastic thing about these events. So I would recommend seek out more events like this that you can go to and attend and actually build your awareness of these important topics, because it helps you find your passion, and it also builds your general awareness and insight about industry and important topics that then will help you shine when you come to interviews and in your career. So I think it's also given us a real sense of just what an exciting, fantastic time it is for us at the moment, despite the fact that everything is virtual. We're still in lockdown. We've got COVID, which when is it going to end? We don't know, but it's still an exciting time. There are still opportunities out there. And it really is such a fantastically, exciting time to be becoming an engineer. And I think just sort of my takeaway point is that, as I said right at the beginning, I think your main job is to try and find out how you can fulfill your potential, and that's personal and professional. Take the opportunities that you can, ask your network for help, and support each other, champion each other. And I think, there is so much opportunity out there for you to make a difference as an engineer. The possibilities are endless. It's such an exciting time. And I wish you all the best with your future. So a couple of thank yous. So just really want to say thank you again to all the speakers, the panelists, everybody in the stream sessions. You were all outstanding. A huge thank you to the WES team behind the scenes who have kept this going, and a huge amount of effort to make this a reality for us today. And a big thank you to Elizabeth as well, my co-host, for doing a brilliant job, and everything you do for all WES members and WES partners. It is just so grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And a last thank you to all of you attendees. We do our best to provide value to you as WES members, and it's something that we really care about, trying to give you the best opportunities in life. And it's just such an amazing support network to be a part of. So thank you for attending, and all your interaction and engagement today has just really made it such a special day. So thank you very much.
I'd like to add a thank you to Isabella, who's been taking over the WES email, Twitter and Instagram. She's done a really, really great day today. And obviously we want to thank our sponsors, BAE Systems, FM Global and Crane, who've put some really, really fantastic stuff up this morning, and really has some very inspiring speakers as well. And all of this will be available recorded to all registrants after our webinar.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's great. And so what we've got coming up after this, if you still want more, there is a quiz that's being run. And I think you should have all been sent a link to the quiz. Is that right, Elizabeth?
Yes, but I've just put it into the chat as well. It's very long, so you might want to copy and paste that into your browser. And that will take you through, but it should be in your emails. If you can't find it in your inbox, do look in your junk email.
Fantastic. And if you've got any feedback on today, how we can improve, or any other comments about what you'd like to see in WES, how you can be engaged more in WES, then please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. So I think that's all I had to say. If you've got anything more to say, Elizabeth, feel free.
I think it's been a really, really inspiring day. I think it's been really great. It's been lovely to host with you. And I do apologise to my final session in my panel where I couldn't even get in to speak or video. But I'm very impressed by the ingenuity of engineers who work out what the problem is and just get on with it. That's really inspiring. And again, I'm really pleased that we've got so many wonderful attendees So the last count, we've still got 84 people online, which is just terrific. But I want to say to all of you women engineers in training, you have come so far just to be where you are, particularly if you've just started your university and had A-level issues last year, and particularly because this year you may have been at risk of COVID in your universities. You may not have had the university experience you want. You may feel that your education's been disrupted. I can assure you that engineering firms are still hiring. Keep persevering. It will get better. My own stepdaughter's 27, and I know the toll it's taking on her social life. And I really do feel for you as a generation, but we will see the end of this. And hopefully many of you will be involved in helping find cures and ways to stop pandemics in future. But please be inspired. Please apply for things. Please go for your dream. And just remember that WES is here for you. We have a lot of support. It's only £15 to join as a student, and we would love to have you join us. Hope you have a lovely evening and the rest of the weekend. Do take care.